Welcome to the Content Podcast, Conversations with Silicon Valley's Creatives. I'm Daniel Garcia, your host and the cultivator of Content Magazine, published by SV Creates. This episode of the Content Magazine podcast is brought to you by Bonfire, a Silicon Valley digital agency building elevated websites for ambitious brands. Find out more about Bonfire at bonfire.com.
Hi, this is Marissa.
Hey, this is Matt.
Today we talk with Marissa Martinez and Matt Casey. They're co-founders of More Más Marami Arts. Marissa is a playwright and a creative writer, and Matt is a theater producer and organizer. Hey, you guys, this is Daniel. Thank you for taking time to jump on a Zoom-type call with me for a podcast. I appreciate it. So now, actually, Marissa, I've kind of seen you around town, and I think we've been on a couple Zooms. I think there was a Zoom I saw and I said, oh, there's Marissa. But Matt, I've never met you. I'm sorry. I only have seen your picture on the World Wide Web, and so I'm excited to find out about you, and really to find out more about what you guys are doing. It's pretty interesting. So before we get to, why don't you guys let's do a quick little overview so people can have some context. Exactly what More Más Marami is. Who wants to kind of take that on? What is that organization?
Oh, yeah, sure. More Más Marami Arts is an emerging theater collective that me and Matt are a part of. We're a small group of artists, and our whole thing is developing and creating new work, new art, new theater in our community of San Jose and the South Bay area. And we want to make theater more accessible to our communities and bring in all types of experiences and folks from around the city to create with us.
Yeah. And it's primarily through writing and acting, isn't it? Is that kind of the prime focus?
I feel like that's been our primary focus the first 2 years since we just started in 2019, but we're starting to branch off into lots of different mediums. Matt could say more about that.
Yeah.
What are some of those mediums, Matt?
Yeah, I think with More Más Marami, we want to create as much art and as much theater as possible. And for us, the way we wanted to start approaching that was first having the scripts and the written word and all of that as a baseline to then start building on actors and directors and set and technical aspects. So we've been doing a lot of basic block building for these plays and for art these past 2 years, but now we're starting to get to a point where we're going to start moving into doing sound installations. We're going to start doing larger DIY shows. We have people who are doing long form improv, just all these different sorts of styles and art forms that whoever is a part of this collective and is interested in exploring takes on and runs with.
Yeah, that's cool. And I guess the primary thing what I find kind of interesting is that it's very much looking at this intersection kind of creativity and community impact, right?
Yeah.
Where's that kind of focus coming from? I think, Marissa, it's kind of part of your kind of trajectory. Is that correct?
As an artist, for me, it's really important, to connect with the people around me. And that's how I really, connected with my own art of writing, just observing my friends and family and, getting to know them and putting their stories into my stories of what I write. And so when I was growing up in East San Jose, I was part of the theater program at my high school. But outside of that, I didn't really know what else I could do. And for me, More Más Marami now as an adult is a way for me to give back to the youth in my home neighborhood so that they can have an outlet and learn about art and theater in a way that's not just at their school. They can do it outside on their own and be empowered to tell their stories. So youth is a very big, important element to More Más Marami for me.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, let's go to a little bit of the origin stories of you. Let's start with you, Matt, because I don't know too much about you. So how did you get involved? I guess I guess in theater and acting and maybe directing, is that kind of like your history, and how did that all come about?
No, yeah, for sure. Originally, what I really wanted to do with my life was ecology and study how these natural systems interact and sort of grow and form and change together, and like how you can look at a tree and it's not just a
Hmm.
tree, it's the ants, it's the birds, it's the soil, and all of that.
Yeah.
Um, but that trajectory sort of shifted when I went to college, and there wasn't necessarily a program that was there to support that. And I got involved with political science and sort of organizing in politics and looking at that as an intersection and ecological system. And then with all of that, I started doing theater at San Jose State and getting to meet all these people and approaching that
Hmm.
as well as an intersectional and system, communal art form where it's not just a single person, it's a writer, and then it's a director, and then it's an actor, and then there's a set, and there's these people coming in, everyone sort of bringing forward ideas and exchanging them and uh, making something better together. So with all of that, after we graduated, I there was a couple of us, Kimberly Pyatt and Andy Sandoval, Angela Sarabia, and Daniel Lerma and myself. We were starting to talk about what sort of theater we would want to create in the South Bay. And as we were going through that process, we met Marissa Martinez, um, and we got started create. We did a 24-hour theater festival, which I don't know if you've ever been a part of those or seen those, but you start at 8 p.m. one night, and you have 24 hours to put on a show for an audience that's showing up 8 p.m. the next night. And you start entirely
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
scratch. And we sort of started hosting those, and whoever stuck around and was a part of those, we was the building blocks of More Más Marami.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then, so then, Matt, when you were growing up, you weren't necessarily like into theater or those kind of arts, and that wasn't really the focus. It kind of happened as you were at San Jose State.
Oh, yeah. Well, as I was growing up, I played a lot of soccer. I ran around. I did track and field. I effectively what happened is I did track and field, and I was doing hurdles and 2 mile and all these things, and I tore my ACL, and suddenly I couldn't
Oh,
embody that physical aspect of myself anymore. In
yeah.
the high school that I was going to, they had a brand new theater, which was very lucky, and someone was like, "Oh, do you want to come help build a set?" And they were doing like Miz, and I grabbed some. They had like trebuchets in the physics department, and I grabbed some of those and built some barricades and painted a set and started putting all this energy into that. Not
Oh,
really
cool.
thinking like, "Oh, this is what I want to do." But then
Yeah.
I
once I
didn't
got
know
into
that, Matt.
college, yeah, yeah, yeah. Once I got into college, I was like, "Oh man, how do I like get involved and engaged?" And it felt like a natural extension without being like, running and hurting my knee or something like that again.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. I'm always surprised on how, in people's lives, or something, especially like if you're, doing a lot of athletic stuff and then you hurt yourself. In some ways, that could be like such a bad thing, but then it kind of turns you on this other trajectory to kind of doing what you're doing now. Just kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was definitely, I was always, that's where that ecology aspect, I was always out in nature and like running around, and then suddenly I was like, oh my God, this thing, it could hurt. And shifted to being inside in theater. Not to say theater's any safer. Just dangerous in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Well, actually it's probably in many ways very similar, right? For a lot of different reasons. I mean, you do have there's kind of like performance pressure, there's physical pressure, the psychological of having to be like on your game, and yeah, I could see a lot of similarities in many ways, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I won't lie. With sports and all of that growing up, I was a very competitive person, and I think an aspect of that of being like, okay, what can we do? How can we make this better? Where can we go? Like, what's the next thing we can do? What's the way we can like push this forward? Um,
Hmm.
is something I always try and bring into when we're trying to create together. I think it's a lot of energy that Marissa and Kim and Angela, as we're all creating part, they bring in another different aspect of it, and like a lot of collaborative energy, and those two sort of things combine. And within More Mas Marami, that's how we sort of build up and grow together to bring these different
Yeah.
approaches.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So that's fun. So you're still kind of like on a team and still working on an ecology of
Yeah.
the organization. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So yeah, so now Marissa, what about you? You started, I guess it was in high school when you kind of started
Yeah.
to do kind of theater, but even that before then, writing, right? You kind of were at an early age where you already kind of like
Yeah.
experimenting in writing.
I started writing when I was in middle school in like seventh grade. And I was just telling Matt earlier, like, it's so wild for me to think that I've been writing for that long. But it's so real. I started writing fan fiction actually when I was 12 years old. And I just like dived into this whole world of like, I didn't have to make up the characters, but I could make up the stories that they
Yeah,
like we're having. My favorite show is Avatar: The Last Airbender, and that's like the gateway into my creativity and writing and theater,
yeah,
to create such a or it's such a show full of like ups and downs and like so much rich character development and story. And
hmm,
it just inspired me to just like write my own story. And at first, it was about these characters that I didn't make up. But once I started writing my own stuff in high school, it's just like a whole process of learning how to, create your own characters and like their personality and the world that they live in. And then I
yeah,
got involved in theater my freshman year of high school. And I was on the behind the scenes, like doing lights and sound. I'm not really like an actor person, really. But I really enjoyed like being behind the scenes and seeing like the magic come to life on the stage when people are
yeah,
watching it. And it's not just the actor, it's like all these things coming together. And then I wrote my
yeah.
first play when I was a senior in high school. And then I never stopped writing plays after that.
Yeah, and did you guys kind of produced that too,
Yeah,
right?
we
For
produced it.
yeah,
Yeah, my senior year. And that was really fun. At that point, that play was kind of like the Breakfast Club in that there was like, all these like stereotypes of a student,
sure,
and they
yeah,
all came together to learn more about each other.
yeah,
That was my first play, and that was so fun. I still look back on that like so fondly, and like all like my friends from high school are still like hold a dear place in my heart because they like really helped bring that vision to life.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. And then you have a now you're a part of it's kind of like a Filipino
Hmm.
like theater group. Is that what it is? The
Yeah, at Bindle Stiff
Bindle Stiff.
Studios in San
Yeah,
Francisco.
yeah,
It was one of the first only like Filipino American theater in the nation. There's a couple others now, which I'm so grateful there's like more of a platform. But I started submitting scripts to Bindle Stiff after I graduated from college a few years ago. And I just got so welcomed into the community there. And it's nice to, be part of a community made up of folks who have the similar experiences as me, being Filipino.
yeah, yeah,
And at first, I was just a writer, and I felt disconnected from the community because they're in SF, and I'm like an hour away in San Jose. But I've gotten the opportunity to just like go to their workshops and learn more about like their programs that they offer because they do writing, acting, and directing. So now,
yeah. Cool.
um, actually, this past summer, I took their directing workshop too, and that was like really fun to just see a different perspective of theater.
Yeah. And then did you have a performance of a premiere
Oh
of
yeah.
In Your Eyes or something? Was that a and what's that about?
Yeah, so I've had three plays go up at Bindle Stiff over the last few years, and In Your Eyes was a play that we actually in the pandemic, they did all these like workshops that you could take online. And so I
Yeah.
wrote In Your Eyes during like the first 6 months of the pandemic in the Bindle Stiff writing class. And then
Mm.
they produced it basically all virtually for their annual Stories High in 2020. And the director, she like took it to a whole new level where like at that point in the pandemic, there was absolutely like no in person, not even like
Yeah.
having rehearsal with masks on. It was all like over Zoom. But what she did
Right.
was like she had it over Zoom, but she made it look like everyone was in the same room.
Huh.
And that story is about two stepsisters, and it's from the perspective of one of them. And so the way the director like staged it in a film way, you know, was that the whole story was told through like one person's like eyesight perspective, and I have no idea how she made it look like everyone was in the same apartment, but
Hmm. That's cool.
yeah, it was just a really great experience to, you know, see like, you know, it's meant for this stage, but the way she changed it for film but also still keep that theatrical aspect to it was really interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. So now it's the two of you. Were you kind of the main? You guys were the main kind of like founders. I know that there's other people on the team, but would you say it's like you guys are the main drivers of it, or is it completely equal between you and 70 other people?
Oh no. Well, I mean, so as More Más Marami, we try to function and work towards a workers' collective model.
Mm-hmm.
So along with me and Marissa, our core organizers are Kimberly Pyatt and Angela Sarabia. Um, and then we have another two who are co-directors, Andy Sandoval and Daniel Lerma, who stepped away for their own personal reasons. Either they moved out of the area or they didn't always feel comfortable organizing. And then we have a number of other collaborators who either help out with specific projects, like Lisa Edamura and Francesca Loy helped out with our annual Writers Launchpad program, which is our Emerging Writers Play Festival, where we take local writers and we give them a full cast and we help give them 6 weeks of rehearsals and workshops to develop their script into that next level that theater sort of needs. Like with theater, it being collective, you need that space to fail and sort of change things and hear it read out loud and go on to that thing. So we do that with them. And
Yeah.
we also have Katie Hipple Garcia, who helps out with education, and Alan Nguyen is sort of like a resident company visual artist. And then
Yeah.
Lauren Doyle and Enrique Munez, who are sort of company playwrights, just to name some of the core people who are really organizing with it. So I guess it does sound a little bit like 70 people all holding, equal ownership.
Yeah.
But I do think in the South Bay and, in arts in general, there's a lot of artistic director at the top model that creates the vision and the foundation of an organization,
Mm-hmm.
which is really cool and really efficient. But it also means that, if it was me or Marissa at the top, it would be our strong voice and driving it, and we wouldn't be able to go in all these different directions and try these different ways and incorporate so many different voices and focus so much on making sure everyone gets the chance to grow and see what works and what doesn't and explore those different mosaic patches of San Jose that makes it such an amazing place.
Yeah, that's cool. What would you say then, just as you guys working together as a team in this kind of process, what would you say, um, Marissa, what does Matt bring to the More Más Marami kind of like team that like you see as like a benefit?
Yeah, Matt, what he mentioned earlier about like what else can we do or how can we move forward? That's the biggest thing that like is the most like collaborative
Yeah.
element for me, because I'm not like that. I don't ask those types of questions. I ask other types of questions, but the way that he has all these like interesting ideas of like what else could we do or how can we make it better
Mm-hmm.
is like that creative thinking and problem solving that I've like never had in like my own experience, but also in any other like artistic collaboration. It's definitely
Yeah.
pushed me a lot, and we've definitely learned a lot about each other, like before the pandemic, but also during the pandemic, of like
Yeah.
the different ways that, or like the different things that help us like bring the art together. And we
Mm.
couldn't do it without those questions, and we couldn't keep moving forward without Matt's questions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. And then Matt, what about you? What does Marissa bring to the team that you kind of admire and that you notice?
Yeah, I think Marissa is so amazing and naturalistic at connecting with people in a way that I sometimes have trouble with. And especially as we're a collective and trying to incorporate all these people, I feel like Marissa is really good at seeing and hearing and pulling the best out of people and making sure that like as I'm someone who's like, okay, what's next, blah blah blah, like all this, that can sometimes be a little, I think, too much energy. But she's like aware of this and is like aware of like, okay, but how can we make sure like everyone in the room is heard, and how are we making sure that we're connecting? And then on top of that, Marissa's so great at being direct about like, okay, we have these ideas, but like, how do we functionally make this happen? Where do we get the money from this? How do we build these relationships? Like, who would be great to connect with? Who would be great to work with? All these things. So those two things,
Yeah.
I think Marissa is really wonderful at, and I appreciate every day about her.
Yeah, that's great. Cool. Well, then, what would you say? I am kind of curious then for an organization like this. Where is the funding? Where does the funding come to put on these projects? Especially if with content being a part of SV Creates and in Gen Arts, and our goal is to help artists and arts organizations. I'm always curious of what are you guys doing to be sustainable?
Oh man, that's a rough question. No, I think we have a mixed approach, where before the pandemic we were looking at getting a large base of small donations from a community. I think I've worked at a couple different theaters and worked on a couple different projects where you have a single donor or a single like funding source, and maybe something changes or they pull funding, and then all of a sudden like you're scrambling. So that was an initial approach. But as we
Yeah,
were growing during that first era, we hit the pandemic. And that makes it so much harder to connect with the community and so much harder to build up that funding in that way.
yeah,
So what we've also tried to do is levy our partnerships and relationships to try and go after grants. We are very lucky to be fiscally sponsored by the School of Arts and Culture, who are just
yeah,
wonderfully supportive of everything that we're doing. And with their help, we were able to secure a California Impact Grant, and we're also getting funding through the Abierto program from City of San Jose. So
yeah,
between those two things, trying to, and also, frankly, just sometimes funding it out of pocket of trying to like, okay, we put forward this money and we will put on a show and hopefully we will make that money back. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Oh, and,
yeah,
just to shout out other previous people who've been kind to us, SV Creates gave us our first grant to start working with students at Overfelt to help them
yeah,
tell their own stories and create their own shows. And the Awesome Foundation was willing to give us, their amazing like small grant that helped put on a series of DIY shows out in neighborhoods.
yeah. That's cool. So I guess the model is somewhat grants and kind of like partner sponsorships, but then also kind of like performance ticket sales in order to kind of like recoup some of the actual costs. Is that kind of like the general kind of model? Would you say?
Yeah. And I think also trying to figure out like what are the sort of business connections and forms of theater that we can connect in and get and can be profitable. I think, working on education as well as a theater makes a lot of sense, because not only are you building up your next, series of artists and series of people who will be involved in your productions and people who will come see your productions in the future, you're also, working with these schools, which, maybe have a little bit more funding for the arts or able to support them in a way that you might not be able to find otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. That's
We're
cool.
also we also have a Patreon, which is our monthly donor
Mm,
program, and something
mm-hmm.
new. I can't remember if we started only in the pandemic, but it's actually, has a I don't know, I think we have like maybe 10 donors that donate to us monthly, and that's pretty cool. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
it doesn't like fund everything, but at least we have something like, like seed money for our next production.
yeah. Now, is the staff? Are you guys like all full time employees with it, or you have side gigs? What's the Silicon Valley
Haha.
hustle of this arts organization?
I
Oh,
would say More Más Marami is the side hustle, the passion project for us. We're not full
Yeah,
time at all. We're working towards it though.
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think every, 2 years ago, we basically had whatever money is in our pockets. In the past year, we've been able to start doing monthly stipends for the core organizers. And,
great.
we've started to get funding from these grants that allow us to pay people a little bit more. And, I think our budget, budget last year was 5,000, and this year it's going to be around 50,000. I don't
Yeah,
have I'm not going to pretend like, oh, next year it's going to be 500,000. That'd
sure.
be crazy. That I
Yeah,
won't stop that if that happens. Um,
right.
but it's definitely something where it's like, okay, we're starting to get there, and it's just making sure that we're taking care of ourselves and we're taking care of each other enough that in the long run we can get to that point that it is fully funded, because it is so difficult in the South Bay to get to that point, to reach that next
Yeah,
step.
yeah. Well, it is amazing. I mean, I think the number of programs that you guys are offering, right? And I do kind of want to, if you can, give us a little rundown. I mean, you have the writers launch, trespass theater, the just one shot, recipes of dramatics, work in progress, writer support circle, story chain, and then I even see on the website there's, probably because of COVID, right? There's, look, these are like actual in-person things, right? That are on hold. So give me a rundown of some of the programs, and how do these different programs that you're doing, maybe like a couple of the main ones, how do they further kind of your impact for art in the community?
Okay, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
So I would say a lot of our programs right now, like Matt mentioned earlier, are we're very focused on writers and
Mm,
building up that collective of writers in the South Bay that we could connect with, meet for the first time, and then collaborate with, not just for these programs, but like long term in the future, so that we have, folks that want to stay involved with us to continue writing with us. So though that I feel like that's the foundation of like our first 2.5 years of More Mas
mm,
Marami. And the writing, that's very important to me. I'm a writer, so I was always
yeah,
always down to do these projects.
yeah,
But it helps me as a writer, and I'm sure the other writers who have been involved, to hear their work out loud. That's what Writers Launchpad is all about, and also Works in Progress.
mm,
Works in Progress is like a table read, whereas Writers Launchpad is a stage reading, so a little bit more time and rehearsal time.
yeah,
But it just it kind of just helps the writer figure out what works and what doesn't. And hopefully it gets
mm,
them excited, to keep writing, because we get all types of like stories from all experiences. And we hope it
yeah,
empowers our writers to keep telling their stories. And even with our some of the educational workshops we've done at high schools, these youth have never even written a script before. So
yeah,
to have those tools and skills is really important, so that not just for like art, but just in your own life, trying to connect with other people, being able to share like what happened to you today or what happened to you during COVID is really
yeah.
important and powerful to share. I don't know if I'm missing, that's the writer part.
And then the trespass theater, that's kind of
Oh
bringing
yeah.
it out of the normal stage.
Yeah. So as Marissa said, each project is sort of tries to provide a learning space for our community. In the South Bay, there used to be, a number of organizations where you could go and workshop a script, or be an emerging artist, like San Jose Reps SJ Reel program. I don't know if people remember that too much, but there
Yeah,
was a place where you could go and put on small shows and make those sort of failures that you kind of need to become a better artist, or make those choices that you need to become a better artist. So we try to do a number of small DIY based shows where you can try and be like, okay, does this format for a show work? Does this style of acting for a show work? Does this location work? Does this, what are all these different choices that I'm making of Trespass Theater? We originally got the funding through the Awesome Foundation, and we put on a series of shows with them. Marissa wrote the first one, which was dealing with climate anxiety, and we put it in alongside a creek riverbed where there'd been a fire the previous year, and it was a
mm,
devised theater piece where the actors helped her write and develop it and expand it, and then we saw, okay, does this work for the audience? Are they able to come, and like, how long can we ask an audience to come be a part of like something where they have to stand out in nature? And then
Yeah.
we try and put these throughout different neighborhoods in San Jose, so it's not just all focused in downtown. We
Yeah.
did Enrique Muniz, who's now one of our core writers, came to us with like a series of plays about growing up, you know, Chicano and growing up as like a young gay man in Chicano in East San Jose. And it was Chingona Madre y Padre Ten Padre, was a series of plays for him. And, we put that on at the Billy DeFrank Center and saw like, okay, how can we get the cast involved furthermore in developing and telling these stories? Like, what sort of feedback can they give? What sort of direction do we need to offer? So with Trespass
Yeah.
Theater, that's a short DIY shows that will be like 30 minutes, maybe an hour, but they're placed in, hopefully in some way, they're making experimental choices and, either succeeding or failing, but either way, we're learning from it and we're getting better each time.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. And then just one shot. So that sounds interesting. So that's kind of like a bi-weekly event. Is that where you just kind of like you jump on and you're like, okay, share your story? And is that kind of the format?
Actually, just one shot is a stream for it's not necessary. It's like tabletop role playing games, like
Oh.
Dungeons and Dragons. So
Oh.
one of our like writers, Matt Regan, he hosts just one shot and he prepares, the story that the guest player is going to go through for like an hour or 2 hours. And it's a
Hmm.
different type of storytelling, a different type
Huh.
of theater. I'm not familiar with tabletop role playing games. I just watch the streams and
Yeah.
I learn a little bit more
Yeah.
about it. But like, it's like you are acting as the character and you go through.
Yeah.
It's a lot of improv too, and we do that bi-weekly.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So does that mean everybody kind of jumps on and then um, everybody else is like each person is like, okay, you're gonna play this, you're gonna play that, and then everybody stays in the character, but then you actually play a game.
I
Is that the?
yeah, yeah. Well, Matt does, and it's really cool, and with More Más Marami, we always want to, if someone has an idea, we want to encourage and support it. So Matt Regan was like, I have this idea to do this D&D or Dungeons and Dragons
Hmm.
long form improv like storytelling with a single
Yeah.
person. So it's just him and the other person, and they're going back and building this world and building these characters for an hour or
Huh.
two,
Yeah,
and telling this story.
I
And
think.
yeah,
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
say like the last 3 months, it's been Matt and the guest player, but I think in December he's doing the season finale, and I think there's gonna be multiple players.
Wow.
yeah.
New dimensions.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So then, how does someone get involved? I mean, like, so say I'm a writer and I'm looking to grow as a writer, and I want to put on a play and have stuff. I mean, is there somewhat of a process, or like how do I just email you, or like how would I jump in?
Oh yeah, I think we have a couple of tiers of way we for writers specifically. We have a writer support circle, which if you're interested, you can reach out, and people meet either once a month or quarterly as writers to discuss like, hey, this is my script, and get feedback on it from other writers. And then that next step would be a works in progress where we would provide a cast for you to read it and sort of have a discussion, a community discussion afterwards. And then once you feel like it's developed enough on that level, you go to Writer's Launchpad and go through a workshop with a full cast over a period of time. And after that, maybe it's ready for, a full stage production as a way we would support writers, and sort of try to have this tiered, supportive approach. But yeah, if anyone is ever interested or ever has an idea, I love it when people reach out to me or I get a cold call and someone's like, I have this thing I want to do. That's
Yeah.
always so exciting to me. I'm always like, yes,
Yeah,
let's do it.
people like
Yeah.
email us or DM us sometimes. We try to stay like active on Instagram and Facebook so like folks can find us and also see like what events are coming up. But we'll get people like emailing us like, hey, what can I get onto the Discord? And the Discord is like kind of our mini community of how we like talk to each other, especially during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
stay
Yeah.
connected. And that's where we like for the writer support circle, for example, we have a channel on our Discord where writers can just like talk about what they're doing or ask each other advice. We also do a lot of like our organizing and planning on Discord too. So we're like
Yeah.
super open to folks just like jumping in with us, even if you don't know what you want to do, you just want to like meet new people or, create something with us, you're always
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah. That's cool. So, and then when you're like you guys have been saying throughout this kind of like conversation, writers, and but it's a little bit more specifically, is it more like play writers, playwrights? Is
Oh,
that kind of the focus, or is it more? Okay, what if I'm just a novelist or I'm a poet?
we welcome all writers. A lot of our current programs are about like plays and theater, but actually in our writer support circle, we do have someone who is mostly a novelist who comes
Hmm.
every time. And I think we had like a poet the last time we did it too. So it's all types of writers. And we're definitely, trying to explore how we can like really support writers who don't just do theater, and how we can work that into our programs.
Yeah.
Especially, actually, our upcoming program in 2022 isn't necessarily script writing. So that's
Hmm.
one way we are
That's cool.
developing.
Yeah. That's cool. So I'm always interested too, just with this whole kind of digital curve, and I
Mm-hmm.
think in the beginning of iPads and technology and all that kind of stuff, people were thinking reading and long form and writing and all that kind of stuff was going to be dead. I think it's kind of had the opposite effect. But well, I mean, for you guys seeing with working with youth and younger kids and stuff like that, it's like, are you seeing that there's still this hunger to write and to read and like just those kind of that art form? Is that still in existence?
I feel like it is. I wish we could be in the classroom more often, but when we are with them, the youth, for the most part, are very engaged with the theater and the writing activities that we do with them. Of course, the last 2 years it's been over Zoom,
Yeah.
and there's only really so much that we can like tell if they're
Yeah.
really engaged or not. But we see that they're writing the script. We get to
Yeah.
read what they wrote.
Yeah.
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 And I think it's the different styles of like, I think as a kid growing up, I was like, theater, man, what's that for? Like, it feels like it's so separate from a lot of people, but there's a lot of really cool ways that, when we start talking to youth or we start talking to people of like, oh no, you can use theater as like an organizing tool, as a community tool. Like we do theater of the oppressed workshops where we work with youth to, they write out like a moment of oppression they felt, and then they act it out as a group, and then they solve like, how could we have approached this moment of oppression, like how could we have imagined a better world and solve this
Hmm.
problem together, and they do that, and then they have that use theater build up this resiliency skill, use so that
Hmm.
way next time, like if they have a teacher who's too aggressive to them, or if they're in a situation they feel uncomfortable, they now have practiced and created a new and imagined a new world where they can overcome that. And that's such like
Yeah.
an amazing theater like specific thing that once we tell people, they're like, oh my god, this is what I was looking for, this is what I wanted, this is something I didn't know that I needed and I wanted.
That's cool. Yeah, well, I was going to ask you guys to kind of like, justify theater. you know, like say like
Yeah.
what is like what impact can theater have on the community? I think you began to touch it. And I actually never really thought of this. Maybe a little bit, but the therapy kind of aspect of even having to like investigate the backstory of a character and then live that experience, that educates yourself quite a bit, right?
Yeah, yeah, that does. And I think like I think with painting and photography, and film, like all of those, there's really therapeutic aspects that can happen with it. And with especially with film, everyone has like a smartphone now, and they can take really good quality camera work and create really interesting things, but there's still barriers of access to all of these art forms. Like, you know, I was in an art store the other day and I was like, oh man, maybe I kind of want to learn how to use oils. And I looked at like a small thing of
Yeah, the
oils and it was
price.
like $20 for like blue. And I was like, well, I can't, you know, I need more than just blue.
Yeah.
I need like a couple, and that's $100 just for the paint at that point.
Yeah.
Well, theater, it's you effectively, you know, you just need something to happen somewhere, and someone do it, and you don't even need all of those three things all the time. We're doing a show that's will be just two of those. So first off, theater is like it's an incredible community tool because it needs so little, and anyone can pick it up. You don't need specific training to be an actor on stage. You just need to be able to, you know, have the desire to do it and be willing to step forward and write something or talk to someone. Or some theater is just you could have a conversation and have it in front of people, and that's theater. And that's a really beautiful, amazing thing that you can't necessarily do with these other art forms. So first, just that accessibility is really amazing to me and something that always draws it to me. And then again, yeah, the therapeutic
Yeah.
aspects of working through these moments of oppression or telling a history or going and doing verbatim theater where you're interviewing a community and then working with them to put on a show that is their exact words and tells their stories on the stage in just a straightforward, direct, and really powerful way. It's so amazing, and it's something we try to create, and I wish I always saw more of around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's cool.
definitely therapeutic for me as a writer. You know, it took a lot of reflecting, but looking back on like why I started writing in middle school and high school, it's like a feeling of like not knowing how to speak up when you are a youth,
Mm,
and
yeah.
that's how I like learned how to do it through my writing, like writing it for myself first, and that gave me the courage to maybe say it out loud to somebody or to share it with somebody to read. And it definitely like gave me the confidence to keep doing it, you know, all these years later,
Yeah.
and to continue doing it for the rest of my life. And it's like also like such a connection with the folks who like who you trust to read
Mm.
your work and then to also help you like produce the work if you get to that point, and to know that they get your story in like a similar way that you do, but they also bring their whole life's experience to like make it multidimensional and to really bring it to life so that other people can watch it and they have their own life experience to think about,
Yeah.
and like when they're watching it. So that's like the whole magic for me for theater and why I stuck with it. And it's different than like novel writing or poetry writing for me. That like I'm definitely as a writer, I'm like a solitary person, but when you bring it into rehearsal, that's where a lot of the fun really begins. And it's so
Hmm.
it's definitely like given me like a foundation and groundwork for like my life in general, but also throughout the pandemic, like creating continuing to create with Matt and Angela and Kim and the other artists has just been
Hmm.
like such a blessing for me.
Yeah. That's cool. What would you say then, Marissa, just for, you know, as a person, as a writer, as, you know, a leader of an organization, what is kind of like your driving philosophy of life?
Um, One of the things that I have to constantly remind myself, but what I kind of like learned in my college days was that empathy is the language of
Hmm.
the universe,
Hmm.
and listening to others and listening to their stories is so important. Um, Not just like for art creating, but just as like human to human.
Hmm.
And that's what I try to bring when I I think about like my community artwork with More Más Marami. And like now that I'm thinking about it, like to my own personal writing goals too, like giving myself
Hmm.
empathy and that room to like forgive myself or listen to myself, not
Hmm.
pressure myself, especially during these like wacky times.
Yeah. 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 Cool. What about you, Matt? What's kind of your kind of like mission in life?
Oh man. Well, I mean, More Mas Marami, it's in the name. I think with like more, more, more. Um,
Yeah.
I think what drives me with theater is I want to see a more interesting theater. I want to see a more, you know, connected community. I wanted my friends to get paid more. I want, everyone, I
Mm.
want youth who have a dream to be able to have the opportunity to like put that forward. I want our communities to have more of the things they want and they need and they deserve. And so with me every day, it's like looking at like, what is it that we're trying to do? What is it the ways that we're connecting? What are the ways that I can try and create more for all of us to succeed and like, rise together for that? I think that is the core driving of like wanting and grasping and trying to reach for more, not, for myself necessarily, but for everyone who's around me who helps me get through, this pandemic, get through the day, get through just everything, and so we can all succeed.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, we didn't talk about the, I guess maybe because I already know, but we didn't talk about the name, More Mas Marami. So that's, English, Spanish, and Tagalog, right? That's the kind of
Yeah.
like the kind of each of them meaning more. I always thought that you guys, now how did that name come about? Because I'll just tell you my own personal thing. I thought Marissa,
Hmm.
because your like middle name is like May or something too,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah, so like it's like MMM and then More Mas Marani. I was like MMM. I was like wow, she really likes the
Daniel,
the
I
letter
wish
M.
that I came up with more Mas Marami, but that goes to somebody else.
Yeah, that goes to
Yeah.
we were sitting around and having a drink, and we were trying to be like, oh man, what do we want to name ourselves? And there was Maureen Valenzuela, who I think is up in North Bay now. But she was like writing down like different words and like all this stuff, and she was like, "Oh, more Mas Marami," and it's like, she's, and at the start of it, it was like two of us were white, two of us were Latine, and two of us were Filipino. Um, and there was overlap between those different groups, and so it's like, if it is in like these are our languages, this is the community, and looking at San Jose of it being like mostly 30% white, 30% Latine, 30% API, and then generally 10% other communities. So being like, okay, it works on like a language level, it works on our personal level, it works on our community
Yeah.
level, and it works as like a statement for that way we can know what we want to do going forward. And we're like, oh, this is perfect. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. So then is that I think even you kind of touched on that, but it's somewhat, I think in the name is somewhat of then a rally call, right? I mean, is it an activism? Is it a like the more like what's like you guys looking for more peace, more
Mhm.
justice, more like better, I
Yeah.
guess too, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think across the board, we have, I think San Jose is a really amazing, beautiful place. And I think there's also a lot of things that people need more of in San Jose. They need, you know, we need more access to food, more access to clean water, more access to just like land that isn't, have lead in it. We need more access to people's people need more access to being able to put forward like their voice and all of these things. So I think it's a rallying cry of just like an expectation of like we can get to that next place and we are the ones who can put forward and do that. We can do this together.
Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. So just one last question. This can be for Marissa, and then we'll have to say our goodbyes. But Marissa, for writers, what kind of like advice would you uh, give them? What kind of wisdom you want to lay down?
Oh, okay, this one's hard. A lot of my writing is based off of my identity, my biracial mixed identity, and that's the only experience that I know. So my advice is to write what you know, but
Hmm.
don't be afraid to learn more.
Hmm.
And that's like all of my plays, all of my other like works. Like you have to like come from a place that's like real and that like you
Hmm.
can be an expert on, but there are other things in this world that like you have yet to learn and that you can put into your artwork too. So I'm always trying to push myself to figure out what are those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I'm always amazed at the mind of a writer. Just even, for to take dialogue and ideas and then place them in characters and then move a journey of a story together. But then even the behind the scenes, the amount of research that has to go
Yeah.
in to do it, to understand like either the historical context or the cultural
Yeah.
context. I mean, yeah, language, everything, right? It's
Definitely.
amazing.
I wrote a play earlier this year that had a lot of like history, and like half of it was basically research. And
Yeah.
then once you like get the research down, then you can have fun with it, with the characters and the dialogue or even the setting.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you for your time and thank you for what you're doing in the community. I think it's really beautiful. And then just to see the number of programs that you're doing and the way that you guys are looking to just really, like you've said, like to have your art impact the community. That's awesome. And I wish you guys just the greatest success in doing that.
Thank you, Daniel. This was fun.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
To find out more about More Más Marami and to support their programs, go to their website, moremasmarami.org. Thank you for listening to the Content Magazine podcast. Follow us on social media at Content Mag. Visit our website to become a member and help us to continue to tell the stories of the local creatives. This episode's music is 408 by Jack Pavlina. Find out more about Jack on his Instagram at Jack Pavlina Music.